All right, on this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we're in Kansas and visiting with Josh Stubbs. Josh shares some amazing woodwork, great stories, and you get to check out some moose, caribou, deer, and hear some awesome hunting stories. We hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Josh Stubbs.
And I'm Brittany Stubbs. Welcome to our home.
I love to whitetail hunt and really hunt just about anything. I'm president of Wifco Steel Products. Example of products that we make are like steel legs for tables or coffee tables. We also make walkways and stairways for the oil industry. So we're gonna start with the caribou. This was probably one of my most memorable hunts. I was to Alaska in 2015. It was a hunt that I went on with my brother, and we hunted caribou in the Kenai Mountains. It was most definitely the hardest hunt I've ever been on. We got dumped on with snow, a foot of snow at the middle of the hunt. It rained almost nonstop. We didn't even see a caribou until day 7, which is when we saw him. We saw him in the afternoon and killed him in the afternoon. And then we had to cut him up and we had to hike. It was, I think, around 5 miles back to basically base camp, the cabin, but we had to go over 2 mountains in the dark to do it. So we didn't get back to the cabin till around 8 in the morning. So we'd been up quite a while. I lost 11 pounds. My brother lost 7 pounds. We saw brown bear, black bear. I mean, it was an awesome hunt, but it was by far the hardest hunt I've ever been on. Another aspect of it is it was late September here in Kansas. I think the day we left, it was 95 degrees. Within about 4 days, it was down to like 15 degrees in Alaska. So a huge temperature swing for us. But I joked that I built this house around the caribou because I'd already killed a caribou and started building this house. I knew exactly what wall it was gonna go on. I knew which way I wanted the caribou to face, so the house got built around him. And one of my hobbies is I love to work with wood, and this is a headboard that I made. It's out of black walnut. It's basically the crotch of a big black walnut tree. And this is also another piece that I made for the bed. Coffee table out of black walnut. And this was actually the first table I made. It's oak live edge table. I'm not sure how old that tree was, but probably around 70, 80 years old. Made this island. It's basically pine from our old farmstead. I grew up on a farm in south central Kansas. I'll show you guys probably my favorite table. We call it the adventure table. Brittany drew out the word adventure and the little mountains, and then I came with a routed it out, and then filled it in with epoxy. And this kind of basically describes our life. We love adventure. We like going to the mountains, camping, or whitetail hunting, or duck hunting, anything that involves the outdoors. Another one of my hobbies is I love to take pictures. So these are pictures of my older son, Vitaly, and a couple nieces right there, and then a picture of my uncle and my youngest son, and a picture on recent trip to Alaska. I love photography. I love taking pictures, and these are just some of the pictures that are important to me over the years. This was a moose hunt with my younger brother, Jared. Here's a picture. I don't know if you can zoom in, but I videoed this antelope hunt, and you can actually see the arrow sticking in him. Here's the picture of caribou hunt. It was a fly-in hunt for 10 days. I like to remember all my hunts, and that's why I take my camera just about anywhere. So I'm gonna show you this picture for now. We'll finish the rest of the story, but this is a picture of a whitetail that I killed a couple years back. I had just put an arrow in him and was able to snap a couple pictures of him, and I'm gonna take you down and show him for real. So here is the basement. This is where I get to keep all of the animal that we kill. We'll start right here. Archery caribou hunt in, I believe it was 2018. Killed him on day 7 as well, 31 yards away. I really wanted a caribou that had the velvet on, and at that time, about 50% either had it on or they were already hard horned. So another awesome trip in Alaska. This moose was killed in 2016 with my uncle and my cousin that live in Anchorage. Unfortunately, they had to leave for just a little bit, so I was left out in the field by myself. I wanted to kill a moose with a bow. When they left, there was a lot of bear around, so I kept the rifle. They took my bow, ended up killing him 60 yards away, and walked up to him and like, what have I killed? This sucker's like the size of a horse. So it took us a little bit to get him cleaned up, but we were able to drive right up to him and haul him away. Here's one of my Wyoming antelope, scored right at 78, I think, 77, 78, which is a couple inches away from Boone and Crockett. That was a rifle kill. I love duck hunting. If I had to hunt one species, it would probably be ducks. I love whitetail, but I really love ducks. Here's one of my Western Kansas mule deer. I killed him with a bow. He goes 185. This was a Wyoming antelope. I think he went 76, killed him with my bow. We waited 9 years to draw that tag. Went out in the summer. We did a little bit of scouting. Went out during bow season in August, and we found a couple that we wanted to kill. I came back in September, and within an hour had him killed. He had come to the Waterhole. As you can see, I love to whitetail hunt. These are a lot of my favorites. So this one was another Western Kansas mule deer. There's a little bit of a backstory to this one. I want all the younger guys to know that even guys that have been doing it forever, we still make mistakes. We still, we try to make the best shots that we can, but sometimes it doesn't always happen. I actually shot him. His leg was tucked up and was blocking kind of his lung area, and I didn't know that, but I shot his front leg, and I chased him another 3/4 of a mile, found where he had bedded down, and snuck within 20 yards, and I got another arrow in him, but that one probably took all afternoon to finally kill him. This deer was my 2020 buck, and Brittany and I were in the same stand together, and we watched him come by at 45 yards away. He never stopped. We had some trail cam pics of him, but you could tell that he wasn't living on us, but was definitely passing through. And so the night before we saw him, sunset, he's going over the ridge, and I could tell how wide he was. So the next day was Thanksgiving. Went pheasant hunting that morning, then got in the stand that afternoon. He came by 10 yards right from behind me. I couldn't get him on film, but I drew back when he was about 15, 20 yards away, and he went maybe 30 yards away. I was late for Thanksgiving dinner that night. I don't think too many people were, well, no, actually they were upset with me, but that's what you do for deer hunting. My son Ian, that's one of his whitetails. Here's another one of his whitetail. I love that buck because it's velvet. And in Kansas, really only the youth are gonna have a chance at killing a velvet buck. We're gonna run down here to the end, and I promise we're gonna get to the bigger buck story, but this deer came in front of the one I killed back in 2019 that goes 201 and 2/8. But just an awesome buck. I love the character, but my son Ian killed that one and killed this one when he was like 10 years old. So we'll start with the smallest of the whitetail I think that I've killed. I didn't start hunting whitetail until I was like 21. I just grew up duck hunting. That's what my grandpa did, and that's kind of what he taught me to do. He never deer hunted. My dad deer hunted a little bit. I just didn't get into it until I was older. But I killed him, 20 25 years ago. This whitetail, I was in the stand and I saw him bed down in the grass, and it was super windy that day, which Kansas, it's usually windy. But I snuck within about 20 yards of him, hit him a little high, so I didn't find him right away. But I love hunting whitetail from the ground, but most of the time I kill them from a tree stand. This one, I killed him in basically a blizzard. It was blowing 35 miles an hour, huge cold front, snow on a ton, and he came right by me with a group of 9 does. This one I killed, man, I'm trying to remember all these dates, but probably maybe 2008, I think. And I ended up finding him when we burnt the pasture. This deer is one of my favorite deer that I've killed. I hunted him for 5 years. The first time I saw him, 11:30 in the morning, I was getting ready to leave. I hadn't seen a deer for 2 hours. I stand up, turn around, and that deer is sitting on the trail. He's 45 yards away from me, but he's facing right at me. He would have come right by me at 10 yards. So I didn't kill him then. Didn't kill him, obviously, for quite a few seasons. Had numerous encounters. One year I saw him 60 times from the stand. Didn't get him killed that year either. He just always seemed to know when I was in the stand. Even had an encounter with him. I was trying to check one of my trail cameras, and he came in at 10 yards away. My bow was already hanging on the bowstring at the base of the tree, so I didn't get him that year. Fast forward the next year, 2:30 in the afternoon. I'd been hunting all week, so I was very tired. I had my alarm set for 2 o'clock because I knew I was going to fall asleep in the tree, which I do not recommend. But he came by 2:05. I grabbed my bow, aired him from 12 yards away, and he's on my wall. We're going to skip him. This is another one of my favorite ones because my younger son, Ian, was with me. He is a buck that I had chased for 4 years. Years previous, he had a bunch of trash. For whatever reason that year, he did not really grow it. But he was in the stand with me when I killed him. And he goes 171. This was my second archery kill. I love big 8 points, and he came in, and I just could not resist shooting him. And then this is another one that I didn't have a whole lot of history. I just had one trail cam picture of him the year before, but when he came in, I just knew I couldn't pass him up. Okay, this is another one that had some history with. I just love how typical and how even he was, except, for this little odd point there. And this is my favorite buck, not just because of how big he was, but how long I hunted him and just everything that it took to really, kill him. And the fact my nephew Reed was with me, actually filmed the hunt. And as you can see, I knew I'd have to kill him early that year. Every year he would lose almost this entire side of his antlers. But first in 2016 is kind of when I first started noticing him. Had him in at 20, 25 yards for probably a good 20, 25 minutes. I knew he could be something special if he lived. In that area, there's a decent amount of pressure, so I didn't know if he could. And then so saw him the next year and saw him the year after that. And every time that he came by me, he was always missing pretty much his entire left side. And so 2019, got the trail cameras out and started getting pictures of him, and was talking to my buddy Justin Hollinsworth from Ohio, and we started talking about how big he was, and it's like, okay, he's in those 170s, and then he got into the 180s, and then he was clearly in his 190s, and Justin was like, man, I think that sucker is going to go over 200, and I was like, man, I don't know. I think he's 190s for sure, but I didn't want to get my hopes up, so when Larry Kirshner scored him for me, it was 201 and 2/8. The backstory on him is a big cold front came through, and And that was the opportunity that I was waiting for. I was waiting for that big temperature change. And my nephew and I were at a football game, and we decided to leave and so we could go deer hunting. And I knew where he was hanging out for the most part. And so Reed and I got in the tree stand probably around 5 o'clock. The deer started moving around 6:45 that night. And there was a bunch of does coming by. And then the deer that you saw in the end, he comes by, and Reed pokes me and says, "Hey, your buck is coming," because he knew what we were after. And I didn't see him right away, and then saw him, and of course I started getting pretty nervous, and he literally came like 11 yards away. I did, what I always do, put the pin on him, release, knew I had a good hit, and watched him run off, got some pictures, the one that you saw upstairs, and then got video of him and watched him fall over. And Reed was super excited that we had killed him. And I should have known better, but we got out within 5-10 minutes, and I'm pretty sure he heard us getting out of the tree stand. And so when we got to the spot where he had fallen over, he wasn't there. And so I started freaking out, and I had another guy that I knew that had a tracking dog, and so I called him, and he probably didn't get out there till midnight, 1 o'clock, and we were following the blood trail, but it was pretty sparse. I'd hit him back just a little bit too far. Still got double lung, but it just barely clipped him and got in the liver. And about 100 yards, we had only made it maybe 50 yards down the trail, but heard from probably about 100 yards away, the guy was yelling and saying they had found it. And so that was an awesome feeling. Also being able to share that time with my son were there, my brother, my nephew, they were all there. And that's really what hunting is about to me. One, giving glory to God for making these amazing creatures and just giving us the ability to hunt them. And the other part is spending the time with the friends and families and, guys like you that just love whitetails. So.